Hey everyone, it's me, Ari Dosset Kolmarshit. I'm your anthropologist and sociologist. If you're Italian, come Emiliano, please thank you very much. Everyone, please hit the like button, share this live stream, subscribe to the channel, become a member of the channel. Don't the links below. Please, you can check my novels on Amazon, Barnes& Noble, where you can find them to purchase them. If you want to book a session with me or one-on-one consultation, check the fees and instructions in the description box below. And above all, pay close attention to this live stream. Take notes, pray about it afterwards, and where this knowledge applies, apply this knowledge to glorify Heavenly Father. Thank you. All right, all right. How are y'all doing today? Oh, y'all. About to read an article with you, posted online by a psychologist. It's an old article from 2019, so the news article referred to is a while back, 7 years ago, but it's nevertheless relevant for today too. And the article was written during the first presidency of Donald Trump. Now we're in the second presidency of Donald Trump right now. So it's not about Donald Trump. It's about the social unrest that made the Trump presidency possible to begin with. But even that isn't really what it's about. It's about a common thing in human history, the us versus them mentality, which we cannot naturally get rid of. We can manage it through policies, but we cannot get rid of it naturally. The only way to fully overrule this us versus them mentality is when people serve the Heavenly Father. But because the world, in doing that, the world will always have to cope with this us versus them phenomenon. So let me start sharing my screen now. All right. Okay. The psychology of us versus them. The mass shooter in El Paso seemed to have an us versus them mentality. Why? It was posted by Arash Imamzadeh over here in the August 9, 2019. Was reviewed by Matthew Austin. Let's read. American versus them. The El Paso mass shooter had allegedly wanted to shoot as many Mexicans as possible. He had posted a manifesto that spoke of a Hispanic invasion of Texas. First of all, this is weird. Texas used to be part of Mexico, and before that, it used to be part of the Spanish Empire, known as the Kingdom of the New Philippines, later named the province of Texas, Provincia de Texas. So, what is talking about Hispanic invasion? The whole thing, the whole construction called Texas is Hispanic. Even though the people who have issued with the term Hispanic, well, I'm not here to please everybody with my terminology. So, but anyway, this is a bit weird. How can something be invaded? Well, how come the origin of something invade something? By the way, it were the Anglo-Saxons, people of Anglo-Saxon descent from the United States that invaded Texas and the next Texas. So that's why the Texas Annexation Treaty. So this individual obviously didn't know any history. But anyway, let's continue. A detailed a plan to separate America into territories by race. With America, I mean the United States, because America in general means both North and South America, both continents, and in Spanish America, it's considered one continent, the Americas. There are different ways of trying to make sense of such an extreme mentality, but one way is to consider it as a form of us versus them thinking, oversimplifying and distorting complex problems by dividing the world into an us and them, and scapegoating and vilifying the latter. Examples of us versus them mentality can be seen in sports and other team-based activities, but also in numerous other areas in life. The polarizing political rhetoric of Donald Trump, for instance, can be rife with it. So what gives rise to us versus them views? Consider two theories. Hold on. Okay. One psychological theory suggests when we perceive our group is in direct competition with another, especially over a limited resource, we are likely to experience hostility towards members of that group. For instance, if we people of the host country are financially struggling and think that immigrants are contributing to the economy only by taking our jobs, as Donald Trump suggests, and his supporters seem to believe, we feel hostile towards immigrants. Note that the political us versus them divisions are not only concerned with immigrant status, they often also concern nationalities, racial categories, and ethnic groups. As some give Mexicans, South Americans, Africans, blacks, Middle Easterners, Jews, Muslims. As Peter Baker recently wrote, Trump seems to be drawing a deep line between the white native born America of its memory and the ethnically diverse, increasingly foreign-born country he is presiding over, challenging voters 2020 to declare which side of the line they are on. Identity self-esteem. Now let's turn to the second psychological theory of us versus them, which suggests this mentality can arise even without the perception of competition. The mere categorization of people into us and them is enough to produce hostilities. For example, many people feel proud of their country even without comparing their country to other ones. If you consider the US to be your country, you probably feel the same way about it. It is likely that even if you are very critical of certain American views, attitudes, laws, policies, or if you hate many American politicians, even the president, you are not necessarily truly ashamed of being an American. That on some deeper level, you are still proud of being American. Why? One reason for this is that our self-esteem comes partly from our group membership. We need to feel good about our group to feel good about ourselves. This can apply to many type of group identities. For example, a few days ago was the Vancouver LGBT Pride Parade, a parade that has many purposes. One of which is to empower LGBT individuals to be proud despite various pressures on them to feel ashamed and feel good about themselves. Well, here it gets a bit political. I'm not here for the politics. Even though this is a political subject, I'm kind of bypassing this right now. I'll consider the slogan of Donald Trump 2016 presidential campaign, Make America Great Again. Psychologically, the slogan is also the promise of making Americans feel not just good, but being great of being American. Of course, one wonders, have not all presidents tried to make America great? The difference is how they have gone about doing so and whether they have been successful. To illustrate, Barack Obama emphasized the fact that all Americans work together to improve the country. The path Donald Trump has chosen The path Trump has chosen appears to be one of emphasizing differences and excluding or rejecting certain groups. While there are good reasons for keeping our distance from some people, in some give actual murders and rapists, there are many bad reasons, and some give racism and group narcissism for doing so too. So following this path of creating emphasizing divisions may be a dangerous way of trying to improve one's self-esteem and make America great. Or better said, as an anthropologist, I can say that will never work. The us versus them attitude is prevalent and not just in politics. As fellow Psychology Today writer Monica Linton notes, these days we take sides on many issues: Democrats, Republicans, vegetarians, versus carnivores, dogs versus cats, breasts versus bottle, Coke versus Pepsi. Obviously, taking sides on some issue, some given race and immigration, might have more serious consequences than others. For example, chocolate or vanilla. So, what is the solution? The one argument involves boundary spanners, people like immigrants, biracial or bicultural individuals, gay members, etc., individuals who belong to multiple groups and social roles. She says instead of marginalizing boundary spanners, we should honor and empower them because they can help us bridge these us-versus-them divisions. Well, I can stop right over here. You can check the article for yourself. Now, I'm not a psychologist. Just know in anthropology and sociology, psychological teams do play a role because you're dealing with the psychology of individuals and groups when you deal with large sums of people. The solution that's offered here does not work. First of all, human beings get their identity from the group. Yes, individual also plays a role how they want to see themselves, but if nobody verifies how you see yourself, it's going to be hard to maintain that identity. Human beings by default seek confirmation, social confirmation. That's why we're social creatures. So having people that belong to multiple groups may even increase tension and stress. But anyway, over here on a Canadian Museum for Human Rights, it talks about us versus them too, and relates to how the Holocaust came into being. Um, and there's this thing called the process of othering. So it's kind of objectifying people who were not similar to you, like these people that don't really matter. So yes, Let me read this. The process of ordering can be divided into two steps. Categorize a group of people according to perceived differences, such as ethnicity, skin color, religion, gender, or sexual orientation, and identifying that group as inferior and using an us versus them mentality to alienate the group. Ordering involves zeroing in on a difference and using that difference to dismantle a sense of similarity or connectedness between people. Ordering sets the stage for discrimination or persecution by reducing empathy and preventing genuine dialogue. Taken to an extreme, ordering can result in one group of people denying the other group is even human, and this often happens. And a similar example of ordering and its consequences found in the Holocaust. The systematic persecution and murder of 6 million Jews organized by Nazi Germany and its collaborators from 1933 to 1945. Even though there are people now challenging the 6 million view, I'm not going into that right now. In addition to committing genocide against the Jews, named Ashkenazi Jews, the Nazis committed genocide against the Roma and Sinti. Many other groups, including people with disabilities, homosexual men, Slav peoples, political opponents, and Jehovah's Witnesses, were also violently persecuted during this period. The Nazis divided humans into two categories: so-called Aryans, the Germanic people, whom they considered generally superior, and a so-called inferior race composed of Jews, along with Jews, Roma, and Sinti, and blacks. This rank of some groups of lesser than was a process of ordering that helped create conditions for the genocide. Wow. I'm still waiting for people to discuss openly the current genocide that's unfortunately still ongoing in Gaza. But anyway, us versus them is a common thing in our human history. And I'm going to address that today by addressing how the ancient people dealt with this us versus them, or better, how they deployed us versus them mentality to keep their societies functioning. Are you ready? Now, let's read here. This is another Greek abomination about to expose, so let's go into it. In Greek mythology, Harmonia is the goddess of harmony and concord. Her Greek opposite is Eris, and her Roman counterpart is Concordia. I spoke about Eris before, also known as the Discordia. Harmonia is most well known for her marriage to Cadmus and the many misfortunes that haunted her descendants, particularly those related to the fabled necklace of Harmonia. Necklace of Harmonia. Let's go to the Roman version first. In the ancient Roman religion, Concordia is the goddess who embodied agreement in marriage and society. Her Greek equivalent is usually regarded as harmonia, with musical harmony, a metaphor for an ideal of social concord or intent in the political discourse of the Republican era. She was thus often associated with pax, peace, in representing a stable society. As such, she is more closely related to the Greek concept of homonia, homonoia, like-mindedness, which is also represented by a goddess. Concordia Augusta was cultivated in the context of imperial cults. So this was imperial cult. So this was a political move. The dedicatory inscriptions to her of emperors and members of the imperial family were common. All right. The oldest temple of Concord, built in 367 BC by Marcus Furius Camillus, stood in the Roman Forum. Other temples and shrines in Rome dedicated to Concordia were largely choreographically related to the main temple, and it included in date order a bronze shrine, one built on the arcs. So these just some of the temples over there and shrines. In Pompeii, the high priestess Imachia dedicated a building to Concordia Augusta. Harmonians and some Discordians equate Concordia with Aneresis. The opposite is thus Discordia, or the Greek Ares. There's a temple named after her in Agrigento, Sicily. It is located in the Valley of the Temples. In Roman art, Concordia was depicted as sitting, wearing a long cloak and holding on to a patera, sacrificial bowl, a cornucopia, symbol of prosperity, or a caduceus, symbol of peace. She was often shown in between two other figures, as standing between two members of the imperial family shaking hands. She was associated with a pair of female deities such as Pax and Salus, or Securitas and Fortuna. She was also paired with Hercules and Mercury. representing security and luck, respectively. Self-imperial coins depicted the goddess Concordia, such as those issued by Marcus Aurelius and Lucius Verus. The representation of Concordia on the Roman coin of the gens Aemilia, the knights of Lucius Aemilius Lepidus Paulus, inspired Laura Cretara for the obverse of Italy's commemorative 1000th lire of 970, Roma Capitale. Well, anyway, no. There was honorary coin in 1970. Well, the lira is not used anymore by Italy. Italy uses the euro right now. Understand this. This entity was worshipped in ancient Greece and also in later Roman Empire. And the thing is, amongst the Romans, they didn't spend much attention to the dark side of Vishnu's deity, which was the misfortune, the necklace of Harmonia. It was there, because they adopted Greek deities and in the Roman religion, but didn't fully incorporate everything. Now, so let's read about the cursed necklace. Oh, you know what? Let's read about it. The necklace of Harmonia, also called the necklace of Eriphile, was a fabled object in Greek mythology that, according to legend, brought great misfortune. All of its wearers or owners were primarily queens and princes of the ill-fated house of Thebes. There are multiple stories concerning the creation of the necklace and the origin of its curse. The most common version names Hephaestus, the god of smithing, as its creator. Hephaestus was married to Aphrodite, who regularly had sexual trysts with Ares behind her husband's back. When Hephaestus was informed of his wife's actions by Helios, he was enraged and vowed to curse any children born of the affair. Aphrodite and Ares had multiple children together, including Harmonia, goddess of harmony and concord. Harmonia was betrothed to Cadmus, the legendary founder of Thebes. Upon hearing of the engagement, Hephaestus attended the wedding and gave Harmonia an exquisite necklace and peplos robe as a wedding gift. In other versions of the myth, the necklace was instead gifted by Athena, Aphrodite, or Cadmus' sister Europa, who had received as a gift from Zeus. In Hyginus' fabulae, both Hera and Hephaestus plotted together to curse the gifts, and the peplos was the actual source of the curse, a robe dipped in crimes. No definitive, undisputed description of the necklace exists. However, it was undoubtedly made of gold. Pausanias debates the appearance of the necklace in his description of Greece, and believes it was likely solid gold, as Homer mentioned in his Odyssey, who took precious gold as the price of the life of her own lord. However, he states it may have also been a golden necklace inlaid with precious stones, possibly amber. Other authors claim the necklace was gold and covered with jewels. Statues describe the necklace as being gold with green emeralds and covered in the image of misfortune. Okay? This is quote. There forms he a circlet of emeralds, glowing with a hidden fire, and adamant stamped with figures of ill omen, and gorgon eyes, and embers left on the Sicilian anvil from the last shaping of a thunderbolt, and the crests that shine on the heads of green serpents. Then the dolorous fruit of the Hesperides, and the dread gold of Phrixus' fleece. Then divers plagues doth he intertwine, and the king added snatch from Tisiphon's greasy locks, and the wicked power that commands the girdle. All these he cunningly anoints about with lunar foam, and pours over them the poison of the life. In its Dionysiaca, Nonnus described the necklace as being made of two gold snakes with ruby eyes, their heads joined in the center by a golden eagle with four wings that they held in their mouths. Each of the eagle's wings was covered with a different stone. One was covered in yellow jasper, one in moonstones, one in pearls, and one in agates. The entire necklace was covered with emeralds. A necklace claimed to be the necklace of Harmonia was kept in a temple to Adonis and Aphrodite in Amathus. It was gold inlaid with green jewels or stones. Years after marriage, received their necklace, Harmonia and Cadmus were both transformed into serpents, possibly as a consequence of Cadmus slaying Hades as a sacred dragon. However, the necklace's role in their misfortune is debatable, though to the couple being blessed by the gods, Harmonia being a goddess and a couple's ascension to Elysium after the transformation. Together, Cadmus and Harmonia have 5 children. Okay, each child experienced misfortune. Semele became Zeus' mistress and became pregnant with Dionysus. However, Zeus' wife Hera discovered the affair. She tricked Semele into asking Zeus to prove his godhood by revealing his true form to her, and she was incinerated. When Dionysus was born, he was placed into the care of Ino, Agave, and Autonoe. However, Hera's jealousy persisted. She struck Ino and her husband Atamas with madness. Atamas hunted down and killed their son Laertius, with like a deer, and Ino boiled their son Melicertes alive before leaping into the ocean with his body, transforming into Leucothea. When Dionysus returned to Thebes as an adult, Autone and Agave were swept up in the Bacchic frenzy, a festival he inspired. During the frenzy, the sisters tore Agave's sons Pentheus to pieces, and Agave fled Thebes in shame. Later, Autonome's son Actaeon was transformed into a stag and torn to pieces by his own um, hounds for glimpsing Artemis naked. Both Polydorus and his son Labdacus died young. In his library, Apollodorus claimed that Polydorus and Labdacus were torn apart in the Bacchic frenzy alongside Pentheus. Okay, we don't have to go much further right now. The story is clear over here. So you have this goddess he worshipped, and in the Greek version, there was an explicit mention to a generational curse. When we go to the Roman mythology, it's more focused on the result of being in harmony together. Now, as I mentioned before, the Greeks had city-states. Let me stop the screen sharing right now. Okay. The Greeks had city-states. And the city-states were often in competition with one another, even at war with one another. It's later in antiquity, after Alexander of Macedonia established the Greek Empire, that the Greeks were forced to form political unities over large land masses. Even that didn't go smoothly. Then it was when Rome took over the Mediterranean that the Greek world, I wouldn't say they were fully united, but um, they were established as one Eastern demographic, east of Rome, as the Greeks as a collective. Before, the Greeks were more a collection of similar people of similar descent, similar ancestry, who share the same language in various dialects in city-states. Each city-state going their own way. Now, when the Romans divided the empire into provinces and regions, the Greeks became the main political reality of the east of the empire. Now, the ancient Greek relation that they adopt into Roman relation, it was softened to be more placatable to the other nations that Rome conquered, like the people from Gaul, the Celts, some of the Germanic tribes near the end of the Rhine River, where today is the Netherlands. So that's why in Roman religion there is kind of a more civilized story with these deities. Not fully civilized. It's just that they're a bit more softer and less harsh into your face. Now, knowing it's the same deity, we need to ask ourselves one thing. If these people believe in harmony in family and marriage, so also harmony in the community, why did they have a whole tale of a cursed object hunting descendants? Okay, so remember I started this live stream by explaining us versus them. Understand this. In the ancient world, back before the Roman Empire was even a reality, before Rome was even of regional importance, the Greeks had city-states, were at war with one another, they were in competition with one another. So the process of ordering happened even amongst the Greeks. The Greeks did not get along, y'all. They didn't get along well. So they often had that us versus mentality continuously, even when they had the same deities they worshipped, that us versus them mentality. And guess what? The us versus them tendency that human beings have in its fallen state was weaponized to make the city state stable in its function, at least. If everyone feels connected and identifies with city state, they are most likely to invest their lives into the city state, and are more likely to overlook crimes or even scandals of the city state. So this emotional investment based on duality, based on us versus them, this dualistic emotional investment, it guarantees the political establishment that people are not likely to abandon them or betray them. Because physically speaking, anyone could just, unless you were imprisoned, anyone could just leave and go to another city state, pledge allegiance over there, or move to even another to a country like Egypt or Judea or whatever, uh, and pledge allegiance there and stay there. So disappearing, abandoning one city or one's hometown, it was a physical possibility, as is today. However, there are restraints socially. If you abandoned your city and you moved to another city back in the day, because there were city states amongst the Greeks, the question was, why are you here? You're from Thebes, or you're from Athens, or you're from Sparta, you're from Thessalonica. Why you here? What happened back then? But even if people couldn't physically abandon their own people, if people wanted to escape and couldn't actually flee, they would escalate and turn on the people near them. That's why throughout history, it also happens that um, when fathers abandon their families, sometimes people just allow it to happen, and the children will put in an orphanage. And there were also times when fathers and mothers were allowed to abandon their children when they were very little still, allow them to die, or allow some school to take them over if they wanted to abandon the responsibilities of parenthood. Because what often happened as a result is if they couldn't bond their children and they were forced to take on the parent responsibilities, they might take out their rage on the children. And that would lead to adults not having big mental health issues, harm the community further. Now, no parent should be, nobody that has a child should resent their children at all. That's pathetic. Anyway, it happens in human history. So how do you prevent people from easily abandoning you or abandoning the city or the country? You trigger them to be emotionally invested based on fear. The us versus them is fear based. You cling on to people who are similar to you because you don't want to face challenges and you don't want to be questioned in life. You psychologically want to avoid any type of challenge, and that's why you cling on to people who are similar. So by weaponizing this, the political establishment can trigger people to all um, join some homogeneous pattern to dress alike, even look alike, talk alike. And because of that, people now are emotionally invested in this homogeneous pattern. It could be people are not homogeneous in ancestry, but as long as there is at least a homogeneous pattern, people can escape into it. It works even better if people are ethically homogeneous. Then it works even better visually. But the thing is, the us versus them mentality then is weaponized to make the home base as comfortable as possible. And it works. People tend to have more friends. People tend to be more hospitable and more generous with one another. People tend to feel more at home. People tend to be more willing to help each other out. People tend to be more willing to be more tolerant with one another. So the us versus them tendency, when it's weaponized by the political apparatus, it works. However, there is a consequence with it. Because this means that everyone that's not part of the in group or part of the us must be the them. So, to keep the strong cohesion internally, the outsiders have to be objectified as a threat or as irrelevant. And once human beings in groups become comfortable dehumanizing or objectifying outsiders, it will translate in how they behave towards them. People begin to have less empathy towards them. And before you know it, anytime people have unrest and have issues, they're associated not with the in group, because in group refers to the self, and because people don't want to look within, they also want to look at those around them, because those around them are all similar to how they are within. That's why I look at those so-called others. Now the others get the full blame, and others get the full violence. Now, in the myth of Harmonia, it talks about this necklace that occurs. It was a gift that was given, but those that received the gift now became, of course, a curse of misfortune. Now, this is what happens when the us versus them mentality is weaponized politically. What happens is that the people who are not conforming to the pattern cannot be just banned, all of them, because you need them around. And not everyone can or will fully conform to the pattern either. There's going to be a little bit of diversity that's tolerated as long as it's all close to the pattern. Whether it is in body shape, it is a specific physique that's praised. If your weight of if your body weight is similar to it, it's okay. But if you're way overweight, way skinny, that's a no-go. Or the way people dress. People can wear different colors as long as it's close to the color codes that are prescribed. Or people may speak a dialect as long as they use the terminologies installed by the political regime. However, what do you do with the quote-unquote people who cannot be harmonized or who will be harmonized with the common pattern? You can't just avoid all of them altogether. It's going to be too obvious. So what you do is, to justify the pattern that you established politically, you now need to also establish a bad name or a bad reputation for the others. It could, for example, be you have migrants living in an area. And some of these migrants are criminals. But the thing is, the majority of criminals in the country are natives or indigenous peoples of the country itself. But because you want people in the country to operate in unity, and unity is based on exclusion, based on us versus them, now you will pick out the criminals amongst the migrants and highlight them all the time. And now people become comfortable seeing migrants as a threat to their homeland. And over time, they actually believe that migrants are really the problem. And when you force facts into their face, now they may lose their minds on you because they don't want to go there. That's why facts don't work with such people, y'all. Only when their own group disappoints them heavily is there hope that they might improve and outgrow this toxic hatred towards the other. So here's how it goes. The others around you, you set them up for failure. It could be, for example, that you have a company, they're looking for a new CEO, but the company is a big mess. The company is involved in criminal activity even. So they hire an immigrant to become the new CEO. And first say, you see, immigrants can integrate. Look at that guy over there. He became a CEO of a local company. First, a success story. First 5 years, the guy's a success story, an inspiration. Then, in the 6th year or the 7th year, a scandal comes out that this CEO is arrested. And now people say, oh, you see there, man, a lot of these migrants come here and they take our jobs, they do harm to our community, they molest our women, blah, blah, blah. They can't integrate over here, we don't get, they can't be assimilated. And now, because the people have an outlet for all their inner unrest, people tend to join it, often without questioning the story. And now, the societal harmony is preserved, and the owner caught the spade is the life and the safety of these migrants. But it doesn't have to be migrants. It can also be a minority that lives in a country. It can also be a group of people that follow a certain religion. Worldly harmony or societal harmony can only happen when there's an homogeneous pattern people religiously believe in without question. And as a result, anyone that doesn't conform to the pattern is either an enemy or they're irrelevant. That's all societal harmony can work. Inclusive societies don't exist. Either everyone follows the same pattern, or you have various communities operating autonomously, not side to side to one another. It's one or two. But you have one society where everyone is on the same page. I'm talking about community, not about society. If one society, everyone's on the same page, it can only happen if people have the same false god they worship. There needs to be the same idol, false god people worship. Without a false god, there is no society. Without the false god, without the image that they worship, there's no society. So that's an its thing. If everyone would comply and become like the pattern, even then you need an other who's treated less or who becomes a victim. So yes, the goddess Harmonia, also known as Concordia, was worshipped to idolize and excuse the societal harmony that was that was established. So people now they don't have to feel guilty nor consider the quote unquote others. In the Roman Empire, the others were also called the barbarians. Not always, but that was one term they called them. Sometimes if people within the Roman Empire were considered the other. So look, if a group is othered, as I say, it doesn't mean that group is innocent. That group can have faults. Sometimes even within the group, there's othering happening. This us versus them is a condition of fallen mankind. It can be managed and contained by policies, but it can never be uprooted from the human beings. The only way to overrule it and to be free from it is when people serve the Heavenly Father to the full. And there's not many people doing that, y'all. So um, understand this. Society, communities should be in harmony. That's healthy. But societal harmony also implies that there are victims that fuel the harmony. Societal harmony cannot exist without victims. Either it's dead victims who've been killed, or living victims, or the living sacrifices were in a horrible financial and physical health condition or mental health condition. So you cannot participate in societal harmony without participating in the victimization of the other. It's not possible. A lot of people argue and say, Rashid, you can. I'm telling you, you can't. You can work on a community level with various people. That can work. But on a level of society, you cannot do this, y'all. It will not work well. So you'll always participate in the bloodshed and the blame that comes with it when you want to participate in societal harmony. But Rashid, how do people get along then? Now, the way to get along is in worshiping the Heavenly Father. But the world ain't doing that. So the world has to cope with all this dysfunction and all this violence. There are ways, there are more peaceful ways to cope in the world than politicizing us versus them. But even those less violent ways to cope are still coping. All, true peace only comes from serving Christ, y'all. Only by serving Christ we have real peace as human beings. All right. Are there any questions about this topic? Let me know in the live chat, please. Let me know. Are there any questions about the topic? Let me know, please. God is good, y'all. God is good. So what do we do about this as believers? Listen, even these minor deities that are worshipped by the world have its function. As I told you before, these deities in the world are not worshipped for the deity's sake. They're worshipped for the social function that people uphold. There's an outcome that the masses want, and to insist on the outcome, they want to control one another through the social norms. These social norms are to generate the outcome they're holding on to. And to facilitate the social norms, they worship these deities. But just know that when people in the world talk about harmony, they often don't mean actual real harmony. They mean just getting along and escaping together. So, and one thing else one should understand, even when people are in a societal pattern getting along, that pattern itself is stressful and a weight onto people, and eventually they need an outlet. And that's why you have the other. Sometimes they will even reward a so called other individual with finances or with positions so that when things go wrong, and they will go wrong at some point, all the stress and contention built by the pattern can now be taken out on the other, and now people go back to the pattern. So when the world suddenly pampers you, especially if you don't belong to the group that's pampering you, watch out, y'all. Even if the same group need to watch out. I'm not saying that communities can't mean you well. I'm not saying individuals mean you well. When society pampers you, watch out, y'all. You're being set up. All right, that's it for now. We didn't get any questions. Thank you for being here. Keep dreaming in Christ. And I will see